Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. Welcome to the Useful Reports Related to Purchasing webinar. And this webinar is being recorded and will be available later on CC Info. We'll talk more about that in just a little bit. And my buttons are not working. Let's hold on a second here. I might just have to back out. Excuse me. My whole webinar is frozen. There we go. All right, we're in business. Okay. So today's webinar team, I'm one of the presenters. My name is Rebecca Jones. I'm on the Connect Carolina Change Management team, being joined by co-presenter Chris Minter, who is also on the Change Management team. Hi, Chris.
Hi, Rebecca.
We're also being joined by subject matter experts. Stephen Gale is Commodities Manager with Purchasing Services. Good morning, Stephen.
Hello.
And also Ann Lehue is joining us. She's a Business Systems Analyst with Procurement Services.
Good morning.
Thank you all for joining us. The subject matter experts are here to answer any of your pressing questions that you might have, so we're very fortunate that they could join us today. Some webinar housekeeping. The webinar itself, it's about 30 minutes of content today. If you have any questions, feel free to type them in the chat box or the Q&A box. We'll be monitoring both as we go through this. As I said earlier, the webinar is being recorded and it will be available on ccinfo.unc.edu. It'll take about a day or two for us to get that uploaded and turned around, but it will be available. So today's topics, we're talking about first how the purchasing process works. We'll go over a very high level of the steps related to purchasing. Then we're going to talk about why and when it's helpful to use reports. So this is pretty straightforward. We're going to be talking about the names of the reports you can run during the process, not exactly how you run them, but we have a bunch of resources that you can refer to about how to actually run the reports, which we'll talk about at the end of the webinar. And then we'll definitely leave time for questions and answers at the end. All right, computer's acting up again. Sorry, folks. There we go. So the name of this document that we're rolling out is called Useful Reports in Connect Carolina related to purchasing, and it is currently available on ccinfo.unc.edu. And how you can find it is you go out to that website and there's a finance tab at the top. If you click on finance, then down the list you'll see making purchases, and then you'll see the option for tips and useful information. That is where you can find this, what we call QRC, or a quick reference card. And that is a screenshot of what the report, sorry, not the report, what the document looks like. So first we're going to talk about how the purchasing process works. And again, this is just a very high level view of the purchasing process. We have about 8 steps here, and some of the boxes are blue. Blue is the work that the requester is doing. Green boxes are anybody else doing work. So it could be an automatic process, it could be central office. I also wanted to mention that during the webinar, I might be using vendor and supplier interchangeably. I know we used to solely use the term vendor, and we've recently switched to supplier in Connect Carolina. So if you hear me say vendor, I do mean supplier. If I say supplier, I do mean vendor. I don't mean to confuse anybody. All right, so let's get started here. Number 1, creating and submitting a purchase rec is the first step in the purchasing process. So Chris, can you give us a more real life example of this first step?
So this step would be, I'm someone on campus, and let's say there's a scenario where someone comes to me and they want me to buy some microscopes. So I want to, the way I'm going to start this is I'm going to go into the system and I'm going to create a rec, and I'm going to add those lines to my requisition and get everything, dot all my I's and cross all my T's, and then I'm going to go ahead and submit that purchase rec into the approval process.
Excellent. So then the second step is it's going through approving and budget checking of the purchase rec. So it's going through the approval process, and after it's approved at the central office level, the budget check happens automatically. And then we go on to step 3, creating, budget checking, and sending a PO. So this is where the buyer creates the purchase order, and it gets budget checked again and is dispatched or sent to the supplier or vendor. Then between step 3 and 4, during this time, the supplier receives and fulfills the order and sends it off to you.
So this would be
Step 4.
Step 4. So basically, like Rebecca was saying, so the vendor's gotten my order. They're going to fulfill that order and ship it to me somehow. So, I'll just use the big brown truck as my example. I'm all excited because here comes my microscopes. They hand me my microscopes, and, before I get too excited, I got some things I got to do. So if they've given me some invoices, I, of course, need to take those invoices. I will need to scan them or otherwise get them into electronic format. I will have to go out to the VISP site, and I will have to use that. If you're not familiar with that, it's the vendor invoice submission page. And essentially, that is how you get your invoices to the central office, and they're going to pay them for you. So you need to do that step, because if you don't remember to do that, that causes some issues down the line because your vendor won't get paid. And you also have to remember to do the receiving. So just because you have the item, you need to go into Connect Carolina and let Connect Carolina know that you have the item. Because once again, if you don't do that step, it ties up the payment process later on down the line.
Excellent, thank you. So then moving on to step 5, the creating and budget checking vouchers for invoices. The central office creates the voucher request for payment and does the budget check on the voucher. Then on step 6, it gets officially posted. That's posting the voucher. And 7, sending the payment. Once the voucher is posted, the folks at the central office send the payment to the supplier or vendor. And then final step, closing the purchase order. After all the items have been received and accounted and paid for, the purchase order gets closed. So that is a high-level view of the purchasing process. So during this time, you might have some questions, and we have some reports that we want to share with you. Everyone who has access to requisitions should have access to these reports, and actually anybody who has access to finance should have access to all of the queries that we're talking about as well. So if for some reason you don't, please get up with your access request coordinator, and they'll hopefully get that straightened out for you. So we talked to some folks out on campus to come up with some questions during these steps of the purchasing process. And so let's start with step 1, creating and submitting a purchase rec. Somebody out on campus, a requester, might be wondering. Chris, I'll pass it over to you.
So yes, pretending I'm out on campus requesting these things, I'm going to put myself in your shoes. So I just talked about how I requested some microscopes, but I probably request, 5, 10 things a day. I'm kind of keeping track of what everyone else is doing. And, sometimes purchase recs get started, stopped, they don't get submitted. I don't remember if I started that one. I was waiting for someone to come back from vacation to ask them. I just want to go in there and see which ones have I started, but I actually haven't submitted in. Because if I forget that, I'm thinking maybe this thing should get approved, but I haven't even submitted it.
Excellent. So what reports can you run to answer those questions? You can run the Manage Requisitions in Connect Carolina. And for that, just set your filters. Set the request date to open to see your results. Or you can run the NCEP Rec Status Query and complete the unit and requester fields to see your results at the bottom. And again, all of these reports are on that document out on CC Info. So at step 2 in the process, approving and budget checking a purchase rec. Chris, what are some questions that someone on campus might have?
So just like that scenario I was kind of giving you before, once again, depending on how things go, maybe someone up the line says, I don't know about these microscopes, or I thought we were going to order from this place. They might get denied. I might have been out of the office. I need to go back and look and see which ones got denied, so I can tell whoever needs to resubmit that rec to do it. Same thing with recs waiting on approval. You hope basically your requisition will just kind of go through each stop in a timely manner, but we all know we live in a reality where that doesn't always happen 100% of the time. So I might want to check to see if it's stuck somewhere and maybe nudge it along some way.
Okay, so for both of these questions, you can run the manage requisitions in Connect Carolina, set your filters to see the results in the request state column, or again, you can run the NCEP rec status query, complete the unit and requester fields to see your results at the bottom.
So in the request state column, how will it read if the rec has been approved? Will it just say approved?
I believe it does say approved. Now that you've asked me, I'm like, of course I can't remember, but it's something obvious where it says something like it's approved. You know it when you see it, but we'll figure that out and let you know.
So still on step 2, approving and budget checking a purchase rec. Chris, people might be wondering what failed the budget check.
Yeah, so, eventually, as we talked about, things get budget checked quite a few times, and somewhere down the line, it might fail, it might break, and you need to know that, because if it fails the budget check, that is going to be a problem, and eventually someone on the back end is going to have to either put a different chart field string in it that does have a good budget in it, or someone might have to do a budget transfer or something along those lines. But you do want to see which ones are stuck for that reason, because they're not going to go anywhere.
Okay, great. So for this question, you can run the NCKK errors rec department query, enter your business unit, then in the rec ID field, enter the percent. The percent button, and that acts as the wild card. So you'll see all.
Basically, you don't have to know who actually the requester was. So if you put in your department number, it's going to find anyone who does requests from your department. Otherwise, if you knew, like for me, I'm Mentor C. If I wanted to find all mine, I would put in my onion in my department, and it would only find just mine. But this would allow you to actually scour your whole department if you have like 5 or 6 requesters and you just want to see everything.
Okay, so now we're moving on to step 3 of the purchasing process, creating, budget checking, and sending a PO. So you might be wondering at this step,
what's my PO number? So this is actually pretty important. So you may already know that when you create a requisition, it gets a certain number, but when it gets to the PO stage, it actually gets an official PO number. And that is an important number because that is what the vendor knows. The vendor is not going to know what you're talking about with a requisition number. That is totally internal. So I would want to be able to look up my PO number. I might know my rec number, but I need to get that PO number for like the translation value, if you will, so I can actually talk to my vendor in a meaningful way.
Okay, and how do you find the PO number at that point? So you can go to Manage Requisitions, find the rec number, then you'll click the gray arrow click the gray arrow to the left of the rec number that you want, and then click on the purchase orders icon. And the PO number shows up under the PO information.
As long as that icon is lit up and there's an actual PO, you'll be able to see that.
Excellent. Yeah. So then you might also be wondering what rec goes with the PO.
Well, that's just the flip of it. So let's say you got in late on the process and you knew the PO number, but you wanted to track down something about that rec and you wanted to know the rec number. For whatever reason, you just kind of want to reverse the process. You just want to see what it originally was.
And for that, you can run Manage Requisitions, search by that PO number, and the rec ID appears in the results. So still on step 3, you might be wondering what day was it sent to the supplier?
So yeah, I mean, I want to know when that thing actually went out, because I might have sort of an idea of like, all right, so normally when these orders get dispatched, I know it's going to take a week or 2 or whatever it happens to be. I just want to know when it was sent.
Great. So for that, you can go to Purchase Order Inquiry and search the purchase order ID, and you'll see the results next to the PO date. You can also go to Manage Requisitions and find the rec number, click the gray arrow to the left of the rec number, click that purchase orders icon, and you can see the results next to the PO date. So either option will work. Now we're moving back onto step 4, which is back in the hands of the requester, entering invoices and receiving.
Right, so I might have a question of what items have been received. If you have a big order and you're receiving lots of stuff and maybe multiple people are receiving on the same PO, you might want to just go and see sort of like a laundry list of like, what have we already received on, what's left to receive on, that kind of stuff.
Okay, so for this, you can go to Purchase Order Inquiry, search by the purchase order number, Then click the document status link, and you'll see the results under the document type column. You might also be wondering, why haven't I received these items? There's no report for this. They could be back ordered, so contact the buyer for that. Still on step 4, entering invoices and receiving. Did the PO get dispatched?
Yeah, similar to what I was talking about. So did my order actually get sent?
And for this, manage requisitions, set your filters to see the results in the request date column, or you can run the purchase order inquiry, search by the PO number, and you'll see results next to the PO status. Still on step 4, have the invoices been submitted and was the receiving done?
So yeah, I talked about before, like if I don't submit my invoices or forget to submit one or something goes wrong or someone forgets to actually do the receiving in the system, I need to know whether this has all been done, because if I'm wondering why my vendor hasn't been paid, this can cause some issues because the voucher can't go through unless I do all my steps.
So for this, there's 2 you can run. Voucher inquiry, search by the PO number, then find the invoice number you want to see in the results. If it says matched in the match status column, then the item's been received. You could also run the purchase order inquiry, search by the PO number, and then click on the document status link. You'll see the results under the document type column. And to see the invoice number, click the voucher number link under the doc ID column next to the voucher that you want. It's a little step ahead.
Don't worry, this is all in the document.
Yeah, it's all in the document.
You don't have to memorize this right now.
And
Also,
results are in the invoice column.
The activity summary is another option you can use to check receiving.
I don't think they can hear you very well. Go ahead and
The
say
activity summary is another option you can use for checking receiving, invoicing, and matching.
that. Excellent. So did my voucher get created? We're on number 5, still creating budget checking invoices.
Right, so I just want to know, like, is the voucher even in the process of getting started? Because once that voucher gets started, then we go through the process of, they're going to, start, hooking it up with the invoice. It's going to, like, put the, how long is it going to take this to get this sent to the vendor? The vendor's basically called me and wants to know where my payment is. I want to see if the voucher even got started.
So to do this, you can go to the voucher inquiry, search by the PO number. If it was created, the results will show at the bottom. Or you can run manage requisitions, set your filters to see the results. You'll find the rec number. Well, when you find the rec number that you want, click that gray arrow to the left of the rec number. If the invoice icon is activated, meaning that it's in color, Stephen was talking about this earlier, then it was created. So are there any problems with my vouchers? Still on step 5.
Similar to what I was talking about before, like even if they've started the voucher, essentially, things can happen. There could be like a problem with the budget check. There could be, it's on hold, it's stuck. There's something up with it, and I just want to go check to make sure that it's going to be moving along.
Okay. And for this, again, voucher inquiry, set the filters to find the vouchers that you want. In the results section, click on the more details tab to see those results. Or you could also run the NCKK voucher department user query and set your results on that, set your filters to see the results on that. So last one on step 5, is my voucher ready for payment?
Similar to what we're talking about. So once again, has the voucher gone through? Is it posted? Is it pretty ready to go to actually get the check or the ACH sent out to my vendor?
For this, again, oops, no surprise there. Voucher inquiry, set the filters to the vouchers that you want. And in the results section, go ahead and click on that more details tab to see the results. So we're moving on to step 6 now, posting the voucher. Has my voucher posted?
Right, so we want to make sure that my voucher has actually gone through, because until it posts, they can't actually pay it.
All right, so voucher inquiry. Search by the PO number, click the more details tab, and then the results will show under the post status column. Okay, and number 7, sending the payment. Did my invoice get paid? Again, you can run the voucher inquiry. Set the filters to find the voucher that you want. Click the actions link that's in the same column as the voucher that you want to see.
Right. If you've never seen the voucher inquiry, you can kind of tell this is a very good place to go.
It's a pretty popular inquiry.
Yes.
I wanted to take another step further. After you click on that actions link, and you, as the voucher you want to see, if you see scheduled payments as an option, it means that the invoice has not been paid. If you see payment information as an option, well, then it means it was paid. So you might want to know,
when did my invoice get paid? You know, so the vendor calls me and says, you know, we don't have your payment and you're pretty sure it went through, but you do your due diligence to say, all right, I'm going to make sure that UNC actually sent it, and then go from there.
So for that, voucher inquiry.
Surprise!
Set the filters to find the voucher you want. Click the actions link that's in the same column as the voucher you want to see, and then click on the payment information, and you'll be able to see the results under the payment status column. So you might also be wondering, what is the ACH number?
Yeah, so your vendor, you know, you've told them like, yeah, the payment went out, and they're like, well, really, what's the payment ID? Tell me exactly what that is, and maybe I can go through my records and see if I somehow jumbled it up with somebody else's order.
Okay. And for that, voucher inquiry. Set the filters to find the results that you want. Click on that actions link in the same column as the voucher you want to see. Then click on the payment information, and you'll see results under the payment reference ID column. And finally,
is my PO closed? So, you know, once everything's gone through, received, everyone's paid, eventually we get to close the PO and it's a done deal.
So for that, you can run the purchase order inquiry and search by the PO number. If the PO is closed, the PO status will say COMPL, C-O-M-P-L, stands for complete. Or you can also go back to the almighty manage requisitions, set your filters to see the results in the request state column.
There's going to be too much to have those other three letters on the end. That would have been ridiculous.
All right. So I said that we were going to, the webinar was pretty straightforward. We were just going to feed you the actual reports you could run, but I said I would also provide some resources on these reports. So please do go check out ccinfo.unc.edu, and you can find a queries guide there. And if you click on that reporting tab up at the top, I put a little screenshot of CC Info's header. Click on the reporting tab, and then a list will come up. Click on queries list, and there is a queries guide there. You can also sign up for queries training. That is offered once a month. It's a classroom instructor-led training. Click on the training tab and click register for training. A calendar will come up and you can search for an available class. Purchasing reports reference card. So that is what we were talking about today. All these reports, where again can you find this quick reference card? If you click on the finance tab and then making purchases, it'll be under tips and useful information. And finally, if you just use the search box, oh, my finance arrow didn't go away. I apologize. We're looking up at the search box in the top right. If you type in their purchase order, you'll get some results to come up. And the top two are purchase requisitions and receiving students guide. That is the actual guide from the classroom class for purchase recs and receiving. So if you lost your guide, don't have one, would like to revisit it, check out that guide. And also there is a quick reference card on running a purchase order inquiry reference card. So you might find that helpful as well. Have we had any questions come in?
We do have one. I think you kind of like sort of halfway answered it, but we need to explain a little better. So Angie's asking, hi, for the next training/webinar, would it be possible to show the actual reports, meaning the live demos? Hard to conceptualize a little bit.
Possibly. That was a decision made, and this would be a very long webinar, and it would turn into a training session if we did that. So you might find the queries class helpful with the actual instructor-led. And it's not a long class. It might be a 2-hour class.
Yeah.
Okay.
So far, no other questions, but you know, folks, go ahead and start typing them in if you have them. We'll stay on the line here. until everyone's done asking questions. And just remember, we have Ann and Steve here to answer questions as well if there's something we couldn't quite convey during the webinar portion.
So a question came in that says, is there a way in Connect Carolina to find a copy of the PO that went out to the vendor? Sometimes the vendor doesn't get a copy and asks us, or they lost the copy. So I'm going to pass this over to the subject matter experts. There's a little discussion first.
Stephen and I were talking because he was shaking his head no, but I thought there was a printable version of the purchase order.
Well, that's available to like the purchasing agents. You can view printable version,
Okay.
but it's kind of a PDF format, but I don't think the campus has access to that particular function. But there may be another way to do it. I can't remember what that is at this point.
So if they needed to get a copy, they absolutely needed to get a copy, what would they do? Contact you?
Submit a ticket.
They can contact purchasing, but there is another way to do it. I just can't remember what it is now. It doesn't look the same as what we send to the vendor.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
It looks different, but
So I guess the answer is there is a way,
but normally when I dispatch all of my POs by email, the requester on the requisition gets a copy of that.
okay.
So they'll get a PDF file, which is the PO. So that's when I dispatch by email.
Right.
As
Okay.
I said, the requester, whoever created that requisition, will get a copy of that PO through email.
Navigation to the reports would be helpful. Is that in the guides, I believe?
In the queries guide, you would have navigations to get to the queries. For the other reports, I know when we went live with Fluid, we had
With the makeover, the Connect Carolina makeover.
Right. Well, sorry, I used the technical term. That's working in this building too long. Yes, the makeover. We did update a lot of things, but now you say that, maybe we'll review and just make sure that everything has been updated in case it is leading to some confusion.
Right. And also, if you're using the work centers, excuse me, I'm pretty sure managed requisitions is one of the options in the work centers.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have another comment that says, I normally go to manage requisitions to see receiving and invoices, but recently a PO I have shows receiving hyperlinked, but the invoice and payments aren't lit up even though there have been 2 payments. Are the invoice payment links no longer working in managed requisitions?
I'm wondering if this particular requisition you're talking about is one that was created in the prior fiscal year and rolled, because those requisitions sometimes are not still connected to the purchase order and therefore the vouchers. So if your requisition was created in the same fiscal year that we're in now, you should still be able to see those links.
Okay.
Yeah. So we have a comment from Melania who says, not sure if all users have access, but they can print POs under the review PO information PO inquiry. The copy printed would not have the chart fill string information if I'm not mistaken. Is that true?
I think so.
We're getting some general nods, yeah. And then Melania was just provided the link to it. You go to finance, purchasing, purchase orders, review PO information, and then of course you just hit the print to print that out.
Excellent.
A lot of paths to remember.
And I think Cynthia added to the link comment earlier saying, got it, yes, it has fiscal year 19 PO name.
Okay. Yeah, well, like a Y19 PO.
Okay, so that would be previous year.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's last fiscal year.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's why.
because we were in 20.
Okay. So we'll give it another couple minutes. If any other questions or comments come in, please feel free to share those. Otherwise, it'll be an early lunch today.
Yeah.
Okay, here we go. Wondering if this webinar will be posted later. Oh, you missed the first 10 minutes? Sure. It will be posted out on CC Info, the ccinfo.unc.edu. The slider at the top of the screen, which is, we have, what do you call those, like a carousel of messages. The webinar from today will be posted up there. And there's also another webinar that was done on, was it Monday?
Monday.
That is posted there. There was an independent contractor webinar that's also posted there. So I think those 3 webinars, recorded webinars, will be available right there on the first page of CC Info.
We've been cranking them out.
Yes. And oh, you're welcome, Angie, and thank you too for your comments. Glad you could join us. Okay, so I think that might be it. We'll go ahead and wrap it up here. Thank you all for joining us today. Thank you to the subject matter experts for being here and answering the questions. And if you all come up with any other questions later, you can always submit a ticket, or you can contact CC_communications, and we'll be happy to help there as well. So have a great day, everyone. Bye.
Thanks.